This bad boy right here is the Huawei Mate 60 Pro. And that is at the center of a trade war between the United States and China right now. And China, apparently, because of the launch of this phone, is kind of winning that trade war currently. And this trade war is getting vicious because the United States does not want a major competitor to rise up and to be technologically independent. But the great irony of all of this stuff is that China is becoming more technologically independent because they are being forced to become more technologically independent because of these sanctions and bans and all these kind of things that are going on. It's a big story, and I want to unpack some of the broad strokes of this story here for you so you can have a better idea of what the heck is going on in the global economy right now, because there are some pretty crazy things afoot. And of course, before we get into this video, make sure to like it if you do appreciate this kind of content, and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. So, China's trade war with the United States. So, this Huawei Mate 60 phone has opened up some big can of worms here between China and the USA. You might not think, oh, well, it's just a phone. Why would it be so crazy? Oh, no, this is problematic. So, China now rolling out iPhone bans. So, specifically, they said that government staff are not going to be allowed to use the iPhone anymore due to worries about backdoors and stuff that the US government may or may not have built into those phones. Founded or unfounded, that's what the Chinese government is doing. That ban is likely to spread out to more state-owned enterprises, for example, and a broader market crackdown on the iPhone. Now, so far, regular people seem to be able to buy and have iPhones, but this is at the heart of a technological war, a trade war between the United States and China. Who owns what technology? Who is going to own the rails of 5G technology and all this stuff moving into the new century? Right now, China is winning in a lot of fronts. The United States trying to stop that from happening. And of course, if China is not buying iPhones, slightly problematic for Apple's sales long term. China AI firms might further lose chip access in a new US ban. This is actually back from June. So basically, the United States has already come out and said, well, China, we're going to make sure that you can't access certain chips. So this is a tit for tat trade war. It's going back and forth for a while. In response to that, in July, China then came out and said, well, fine. If you're going to not let us buy chips, then guess what? We're not going to give you the metals that you need to make the chips, because China has a lot of those rare earth metals. Of course, we're finding more sources of rare earth metals around the world. China's not the only producer these days, so they certainly do have a big share of the market, and them banning export of those metals needed for semiconductors is problematic. I like this article from the New York Times. An act of war, because this is a trade war. These are two major countries fighting over the future of technology. And it might be easy sometimes to think, wow, it's just trade. Is it really that big of a deal? You have to remember that, let's go back to World War II. Japan was put under an oil embargo. And a lot of people say that that is why they had to attack Pearl Harbor. Now, I'm not a history buff. Obviously, here we're not trying to decode what happened 100 years ago or 80 years ago, whatever it might be. But let's not pretend that trade bans, trade embargoes, blocking materials going from one place to the other, this is not the direction we want the world to be moving in. We need more cooperation, not more antagonism, not more fighting. But that's exactly what we have. So the Biden administration thinks it can preserve America's technological primacy by cutting China off from advanced computer chips. But could the plan backfire? So here we go. Last October, the United States Bureau of Industry and Security issued a document that underneath its 139 pages of dense bureaucratic jargon and minute technical detail amounted to a declaration of economic war on China. The magnitude of the act was made all the more remarkable by the relative obscurity of its source. One of the 13 bureaus within the Department of Commerce, the smallest federal department by funding, the BIS. Very, very interesting. So, an obscure agency starting a trade war, of course, not by themselves. Nothing happens in a vacuum, does it? Now, before we break down some more of the implications of this, I just want to let you know that every single week, my team and I are producing Wealth Mastery. This is the best newsletter in the cryptocurrency space. So, if you are investing in crypto and you want the latest alpha on altcoins, latest news on the cryptocurrency market, you want to find hot airdrops before everybody else is talking about them, you got to get signed up to our free newsletter. Use the link in the description to get started. And you can join our 75,000 weekly readers by getting the latest and best straight to your inbox. Now let's go back to this China story. So the Mate 60, the Huawei Mate 60. Why is this causing such a stir, this particular phone? Well, Huawei and SMIC, which is a microchip maker, they have developed a 7-nanometer processor for the Mate 60 Pro smartphone, indicating progress in China's domestic chip ecosystem. The processor utilizes SMIC's advanced 7-nanometer technology, showcasing the country's efforts to reduce reliance on foreign chip-making tools. Despite U.S. restrictions on Huawei's access to chip-making tools, the company has launched a limited 5G model using stockpiled chips. Research firms predict a return to the 5G smartphone industry by the end of the year. This is all about the battle for 5G, the future of technology, and who controls what. As it always is, isn't it? It's always about who makes the money off of what, man. Every single damn time. And of course, regular people suffer from this BS. Anyway, research firms predict a return to the 5G smartphone industry by the end of the year, with Huawei leveraging its own semiconductor design tools and chip making from SMIC. The launch of the Mate 60 Pro coincided with a visit by the Commerce Secretary from the United States, Gina Raimondo. Oh, that's good timing, isn't it? They were waiting for that. They were waiting for that, weren't they? Hi. You see, the thing with the Huawei Mate 60 is that phone shouldn't have been possible. The United States and their trade war against China thought that they'd nailed a big one by cutting them off from the chips. And then a very short amount of time later, here they are, 7-nanometer chips. And I know right now, the United States is pushing out 3-nanometer chips. It's a big improvement over the 7-nanometer chips, obviously. Still, though, this is a big move towards the Chinese chip industry. And microchips are the new oil, in case you haven't heard. It is what is making the world go around. It's what makes everything that we're doing right now, having this conversation, you listening to me on your device, happen and to be possible. And of course, the response to this is a slight melting of heads. U.S. lawmakers call for ending Huawei SMIC exports after chip breakthrough. They're pissed. I like this guy's breakdown of it. Let's see if I got this straight. A Chinese domestic company in a country called China sells its products to another Chinese company in a country called China. That's Huawei, who then sells the product, a mobile device, to Chinese citizens who are living inside of China. And this violates U.S. sanctions laws. Yep. It's funny, isn't it? But Huawei, China, they will not be stopped so easily, making new partnerships with companies like Saudi Arabia, of course, who just joined the BRICS grouping, or will officially be entered as a member on January 1st of next year, investing huge amounts of money with a plan to support 200,000 new developers in Saudi Arabia and work with 1,000 local partners and 2,000 startups with its cloud computing services over the next 5 years, making big moves. And of course, all of this has so far meant that, well, Apple in particular has lost a lot of money, hundreds of billions of dollars in valuation taken off of Apple stocks over concerns that there's going to be a big slowdown in one of their primary markets in sales, which is China. And you have to look at all this in the backdrop of the wider macroeconomic situation. What's happening with BRICS? A rising center of poles, a potential for a return to a multipolar world, which has wild, far-reaching economic consequences for commodities, for the US dollar, for the future of technological innovation, because cooperation is a really good thing. And when we all cooperate together, we tend to do better long term. Lack of cooperation, though, does not mean an end to innovation, as China is proving right now. The United States wanted to stop cooperating on chip sales, and so China said, well, to develop chips domestically, and they're not as good as the US ones. Remember, 7 nanometer versus 3 nanometer. But still, it's a very impactful moment. Interesting, too, that with these new members joining BRICS, we have President Biden and other G20 leaders announcing a major international infrastructure project, connect India, the Middle East, Europe with railways, shipping lines, high-speed data cables, energy pipelines. Everybody is vying for the favors of these different countries. Again, we are witnessing a massive trade war unfolding here, and it's all about this. China and the USA are locked in this trade war, of which the results of could see one of these countries taking out the other, which is China, of course, to be the number one global economy. Is the Huawei Mate 60 proof of China's unstoppable innovation? And look, there's a lot of problems domestically for China right now. We have high youth unemployment rates. We have the central bank making pretty dramatic moves to try and reignite the property market, reignite consumer spending within China. But do you think that the United States is ever going to lose its number one spot to China? Will China continue to succeed in spite of whatever bans or sanctions are thrown at it? Do they have enough partners with the BRICS group? And of course, what are the implications of all of this long-term economically for, well, everybody everywhere? Because times are a-changing. Let me know in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.